All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the June 27th meeting of the Gilman Square City Redevelopment Parcels Civic Advisory Committee, or CAC. My name is Ben Demers. I'm a senior planner with the Economic Development Division of the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development with the City of Somerville, and I serve as staff to the Civic Advisory Committee. I'm just going to take a second to share my screen. Can everyone see this? Cool. Okay. I'll also make a quick note on technology that we make at the start of all these types of meetings. So this meeting is being conducted remotely using Zoom. Across city meetings, in order to comply with open meeting law, which is guidance from the state, which doesn't allow for what is called side conversation, we have disabled the chat function amongst attendees. So if you as an attendee have a question at all this evening, please just raise your hand and I will call on you. So there should be a raise hand function under Zoom that you're able to use. We ask that you keep any comments this evening to about 3 minutes. Yeah, those are the main housekeeping items. So I'll shift into reviewing our agenda. Cool. So we're going to start off, as we do with all meetings, with a roll call and approval of previous meeting summary. And then we'll have the first public comment period. So these meetings have public comment periods at both the beginning and the end. The first one will limit to about 10 minutes, but the second can go on. The third item is an update on the temporary activation of city-owned land in Gilman Square, as I'm sure many of you have seen. The fourth is then going to be consideration of urban renewal in Gilman Square. So this is a continuation of the conversation that we were having in March about the possibility of using urban renewal. The fifth is the neighborhood updates from CAC members. So any updates that committee members have, would love to share them here. We'll then have a second public comment period before we have a quick check-in on summer scheduling, and then we'll adjourn. And let me just also take a quick second to make sure if we have any attendees. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to shift into our roll call and approval of the previous meeting summary. So let me just run through the names of the CAC members that are here with us. So Diana?
Here?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh.
Diana's here.
Sorry. Melinda?
Sorry, here.
No problem. Ram?
Here. Here.
Thank you. Casey is not with us this evening. Jack? I don't see Jack joined yet. He did mention he'll be able to join, but I will check back in if he's able to join us at some point. Lisa is not able to attend this evening. Jamie?
Yep, here.
Thank you. Jennifer Kerber also had a last minute thing come up. And then Michelle is also not able to make it this evening. Ben? Elgart?
Here.
Awesome, thank you. And then Councilor Jesse Klingon?
Present.
Sorry about that. And then Councilor Benjamin Campen. Perfect. And then I also shared the meeting summary from our last meeting was in April with CAC members ahead of time. I'm not sure if y'all had a chance to review, but if you did have a chance to review, did anyone notice any issues or edits that they would like to make to the summary? If not, I can post it to the website. I will also look for some sort of affirmative just to get people talking this evening as we move into more substantive items.
I didn't notice anything.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
I haven't had time to read it over, but given that I think it's mostly just description of discussion rather than any action items, but I think it's probably I'll be okay, but I haven't actually read them. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, it's generally my meeting summaries are just descriptions of discussion. Cool. Okay, thank you. So with that, let me shift us into our first public comment period. We don't actually have any members of the public here this evening. We can obviously use this space if CAC members have anything pressing, but obviously we have that space later for neighborhood updates. Does anyone have anything pressing they want to discuss in this time period? No. Cool. Okay. With that, I'm going to shift us into our first substantive item for the evening. And I know that Rishika is going to be joining us from Culture House at 5:45, so we are 2 minutes off. But I can start off with a kind of just quick summary of the item, and then we can always have kind of early discussion. And then when Rishika joins, she can shift into her presentation. So as everyone in this group, also just want to make sure my screen is still sharing, correct? Yeah, okay. So as everyone in this group has probably seen, the city in partnership with Culture House, which is a local placemaking design firm, opened a temporary pop-up space on the Homans lot or 350 Medford Street on June 15th, named Gilman Pop-Up Park. So the space has been operating regularly since that time and is open the same hours as a normal city park, which is 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then Culture House also has a staff person at that site regularly from Tuesday through Sunday to support programming and also to collect data on use of the space. So we'll be joined, as I mentioned, by Rishika Dewan from Culture House this evening, who's going to talk more about the final design that was selected for the space and just kind of talk more about, the events that they're seeing and sort of what they're learning in the early days. I do, to this group, really want to express appreciation for patience in the weeks leading up to the opening. It was a pretty tight process, and it took us a little longer than we had allocated to get the final approved design. It was already a tight process to spend this within the ARPA timeline, and then having things pushed back a bit. While we finished that design, a lot of the work of actually building out the space was done in sort of the week and a half leading up to the opening, which made it very hard to communicate accurately when things were going to happen. That's not my ideal. I'll continue to try to be as communicative as possible when the space is experiencing changes, but I am very appreciative of the patience and for people that were able to come out to the first day of events on June 15th. I do also want to make one note, and you'll see this when we're looking at the design that Rishika will show. We had talked, I know, about using both the Homans lot and the triangular park across the way at Pearl and Medford. But the Homans lot ended up needing sort of the most concentrated attention, so we focused a lot of the efforts there. It hasn't completely ruled out use of the triangular park, but it's also kind of a fairly functioning green space, and it's very steep, so it makes hosting programming there quite difficult. So that's kind of why we've been deciding to focus the efforts on the Homans lot specifically. Let me see if Rishika has had a chance to join. I do see her on. Rishika, is audio working and everything?
Yes.
Cool. And I know you just joined, so I kind of just took a moment to overview the space is open, which is really exciting. Open on June 15th. Express some appreciation. I know it was a lot in like the 10 days leading up. There was a lot of work done to kind of get the space actualized. Yeah, I can pass things over to you to kind of talk about the final design that was selected and then also just kind of what Culture House has been seeing in the early days of programming.
Sure, yeah. Could I share my screen?
Yes. Sorry, give me 1 second. And I should note also after Rishika's presentation, we'll have plenty of time for kind of questions and comments. So obviously want to hear that from everybody who's here this evening. Okay, you should be able to now, Rishika.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah, well, like Ben mentioned, it's loading. Oh, there we are. We did open on the 15th and we opened with the Gilman. I have the wrong date on here for the meeting. I apologize. From last time, but we opened with the Gilman Marketplace, which we're doing with Winter Hill Brewing, and we're doing with Wiley, who's a resident in Gilman Square and owns a local business, the vintage store in Union Square. And working with them. And it was a great opening day. We do know that there were a lot of things that we were still working on while that was happening, and we do apologize for the chaos that might have been on site. We are also kind of working through getting final details on the site as well, and also from the feedback that we've heard from people there and people who have visited the site since then, just learning more as we go through that. And also we are kind of definitely prepared on our side to make sure that things that do come up last minute and like things we didn't see, we are prepared to try to answer them on the spot as well. Definitely with the event as well, there were a lot of things that we still have to work through. It was the first event, so we're hoping that we get the hang of it this weekend or the weekend of the next one. But we are really working together with everyone to make this possible. I just want to just generally go through the goals that we had shared out last time. I also have updated images from people using the space, which is exciting. We've already been open 2 weeks now. We've had, this was like a fitness class. It was one of the days that there was a heat wave. People still wanted to come out. They did this. They had a little water fight there as well, which was fun. But yeah, like people are using the space, which is exciting. But also just going through the goals of, wanting to bring people into Gilman Square and connecting it to the rest of Somerville. So really working with community members, community organizations, local groups to kind of get these events in here and get people to the space. Lots of people coming by and kind of just like, wow, we didn't even realize this was here. We've always seen this as empty. This is so great to see in this community, in the kind of just like even just walking by on our commute and things. So really starting to see those people coming in from all over to try to come to these spaces and events. And also amazing community partners that we're working with who do events all over Somerville and trying to bring them to Gilman Square. And then, also bridging the gap between multiple sites, like Ben mentioned, we did focus a lot of our budget and hours towards this site because it was a complex site and needed a lot more work done on it. But also, and I should send these pictures over, we did work with an artist who has done the animal murals on the community path. He's done 2 murals that are actually on the triangular park. So that's really exciting. There's like a praying mantis that he made specifically for this project. So yeah, we are trying to use that space too and trying to see different uses. So if anyone has ideas, definitely let us know. And then bringing out vibrancy to the Gilman Square neighborhood. This is from the opening day. This is at the beer garden. But temporarily activating the site, creating a hangout space. We do know it's really hot. We have had a couple of people who have come by to hang out in the space when the umbrellas are up. So we're really trying to also ourselves kind of get a hang of things while like staff is there to have umbrellas open, makes it more inviting for people to come in. So really working through the weather aspect of it as well. And then creating an identity for the neighborhood by highlighting history, arts, and culture. So really working with the local artists to see how we can make that happen. And then testing out future uses of a vacant site in Somerville. This is from engagement that we did at the high school with the D-Lab students, which was really exciting. So just like learning from them of like, what do they want to see in their community? What do they want to see in their backyard? So really taking those learnings, putting them into the space, as well as connecting the learnings that we learn while we're open as well to conversations around city-owned land, city-owned property around Somerville, identifying future activation ideas, and creating a space for systemically marginalized communities to also be members and active participants. So really trying to like hear us with the high school students, making sure we're getting the teen voices, making sure we're getting all the voices in this space and designing it out. Operations, mostly just also letting you guys know what we're doing. So data collection, we are doing some form of observational data collection. We do this as kind of perceived data of how people are using the site. So it really helps us kind of understand what's working, what's not working, how are people moving the furniture, So people, anything someone does on that site, it gives us data to work with. So we're doing them through field notes, just like observations and conversations. Right now, a lot of conversations with people have been just like a lot of people surprised that this is here, kind of understanding what's happening, wanting more information. And it's been, yeah, people learning. Someone came by today while I was at the site, and he lives on Highland Ave. And he's like, I drive by this space every day and I had no idea this was here. And he's very excited. He's going to come on Saturday as well. So someone came by also asking if we could do like a summer concert series. And, so like people really excited to see the space and wanting to use them, which is really great for us to see as well. And then demographic data, again, this is perceived gender, race, and age. This is not self-identified. And we use this more kind of understanding how people might be perceived in a public space is how they sometimes use a public space, or feel safe or feel welcomed or accessible or feel access to a public space. And that's how we use this data. And then desire lines and activity mapping is understanding, again, more of like, how are people using the space? Are there unexpected things that they're doing? Did they move the furniture? Obviously, a lot of that data right now is just showing everyone's just looking for the shade. And we understand that. And we're really working on seeing how we can get some more on there and how we can work through that. And then we are doing surveys. They will be out next week, but there will be surveys for people. We will have some physical ones there, but I think we are working towards also QR codes, just given that it is an outdoor space, trying to get people to just answer questions of like what brought them there. So understanding where people are coming from. Is this understanding if people are coming from the neighborhood? Are we getting people from all over Somerville that are coming to this space? Kind of understanding how are we addressing these goals that we started with, understanding people's experience in the space, what did they like, what did they not like, what are things you want to see more of in the future, and also looking at like the future of Gilman Square and asking those questions too. And then more on programming. So this was really great. I forgot her name, but she came by on Saturday. It wasn't a planned event. She was just looking for a space where she could do her art, and she wanted to sit outside, and she found this, like, she happened to walk by our space and she just sat there, and she sat there for like an hour or two. And it was really great. We also had the food vendor there, so it was really nice to have her use the space, and she definitely said she's going to come back, which is exciting. But it was just nice to see someone just walking in and wanting to do something in there. But just also giving you a general highlight of things that are coming up over the next few months is we're working on the marketplace with Wiley and Winter Hill. We also have another brewery coming in, Notch Brewing. So starting from the 13th, we will have beer gardens like every weekend, which is great. But also looking at food. We have music performances coming up. We're definitely working through what is the capacity of a generator. So once we are also working through that, also working with music performances over the next few months. We're working with Wiley again on movie nights. We do have to keep an eye on the weather. So unfortunately, the one that we were supposed to do this last month didn't happen because we had a storm that night. And then art workshops. We just had one yesterday. Local artist, she did a make and mend, a mending station. So people came in and mended their clothes. We have a couple coming up over the next few weeks. And then we have an improv workshop. They interestingly have used our space in Union Square, and they're really excited about using more community spaces. And they were able to like work with us again in this spot. So it's really exciting to also get the queer community kind of create their community in this space too. And then we had like fitness and wellness workshops. We actually tonight have one at 6 o'clock. We have like a meditation workshop that's going to happen, which is, I know everyone's in this meeting, but if you know anyone who wants to go, definitely let them know. And then we are working on some office hours with right now with some city councilors, and then also looking at different city departments that might be interested in coming down and being part of, tabling one day, just having information and seeing what that looks like. And that's the program part. And then I have more in the budget. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to want me to go through this, if you wanted to go through it, what's the best way?
Yeah, I think this was mostly just like if people had any specific questions about budget items that we like have these slides here. Michelle had reached out asking if like a copy of the budget can be shared. And so we have like one edit for clarity that we're making to that, but I can send that out tomorrow or early next week to all the CAC members, just so people have a sense of like where the budget for the project has gone.
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to go through these slides or should I, because this is kind of the last part that I had.
I think we can kind of like shift into question time, but like I said, if people do have specific questions, like as we're getting into that, happy to talk about any individual piece of it.
Yeah, I know
Um,
Ben is going to share it out with you, but if we do ever want to bring it up, I have the total budget here. I have a breakdown if there are any questions, and I'm happy to reshare if needed.
Yeah, thank you, Rishka. I guess before we shift into questions, the one thing that I will really call out regarding programming. So probably the biggest like challenge that we are still facing between both the city and Culture House is getting more food vendors to the site on weekdays, especially. People have been very excited about the weekend times. And we've done a lot of outreach like to local food vendors, to local food trucks. We've had a local Brazilian restaurant based in East Somerville, Redevelopment. They have served on the site multiple times. I think we have like a slushy vendor that's going to be there this weekend. So there's been a lot of interest in the weekend times, but I think a lot of it's just been harder to get somebody for those weekday times. But we know that's obviously something that people are looking for. And that's something that's come up in these CSE meetings. So if there are any food vendors that you know might be interested in this, please encourage y'all to connect them with us. We're really trying to encourage this and maybe find times when we can really encourage people from the city to go to make sure that they, they have business on that day. And so make sure that we're advertising it appropriately the way that we would with other programming. And then the one other thing I'll note, sorry, Rachel, I'll shift it over 1 second. If any of y'all also want to lead any programming on this site, please reach out. As Rishika mentioned, like, people are doing things like office hours or meetups for different groups. So if you are part of a group that you think would want to get together here, I know the neighborhood council is looking to host their monthly meeting in July on this site on Monday. So anything like that is super welcome here. So yeah, I'll pass things over to Rachel.
I was gonna just throw a question, Jamie, your way, thinking about your team, since you're also like there for workday times. If you guys have a big event, or a big all in-person day, like if everybody comes in on Wednesdays or something like that, that's super helpful information that we can use as we talk to food vendors.
Yes, I was thinking about that as well. Yeah, predictably Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are bigger for us. But yeah, and I just say, yeah, I think if as soon as anyone knew if there was going to be a daytime food opportunity, I'm pretty sure like every single person would go over there. I would make sure they would. But yeah, and if and I'm trying to think too, I'm like, oh yeah, if we're having group meetings, we should be utilizing that space, for a change of scenery. I was wondering if any of us do think of food vendors or any other people that want to provide programming, what would be the best way to get them in touch?
Yeah, so if there's anybody interested, I would say you can reach out either to Rishika, and her email was on this presentation, but you can also just reach out to me, because often the food vendors are going through my coworker, Kelly O'Loughlin, who's not able to join us this evening, but is kind of like that bridge with permitting. So it'll probably ultimately end up with Kelly. So if you want to just send me a message, I can connect.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think City Hall would truly like flood out on that day down to any food option. So I hear you. I'm gonna start sharing screen again, just like as we're getting comments, I can capture them. Okay, cool. Any other questions about how the space is operating, or I guess like comments if anybody's been able to make it over there, or any questions on like design and things like that? Ben, I saw your hand come up first.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know that there's a lot of hours of the day that possibly can be monitored. I was wondering if there are any gaps identified so far?
Sorry, gaps in.
In like times of day being monitored in terms of activity or programming. It sounded like there was a pretty good effort to balance weekday and weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Risha could.
Oh, sorry. Oh, so we have staff there, from, Tuesdays to Sundays, at different times. We're also like varying staff based on like when we have an event so that there's someone there to accompany them, and help out whenever needed. Right now, right now, like event programming wise, in terms of like workshops, performances and things like that, we are pretty covered all week. But what we do need help with is food vendors. That's kind of our biggest gap at the moment. And I know there was definitely like wanting something during the lunchtime, and definitely like coffee as well. So those are kind of the two gaps we're seeing, in terms of programming.
Risha, can you remind me, it's Wednesday through Monday or it's Tuesday through Sunday?
Tuesday to Sunday.
Okay. And then, Ram, I saw your hand up, but I saw that you also put a question here in the chat. So has anyone reached out to the Arts Council's Nibble program? Which I'm assuming is the question you had your hand raised for. So my colleague Kelly that I mentioned, she was able to meet with the Nibble coordinator and kind of talk to them about the site. And ultimately, they weren't in a place to kind of like be providing the infrastructure necessary for people who are in the program to be able to be serving. But we have done some outreach to them, and I think like separately, people that have graduated from the program, we have heard some interest. So we're kind of trying to see if there are ways that we could support them for that. I know they've also kind of talked with other restaurants that kind of like maybe have more of that infrastructure. So Nibble has definitely been top of mind. We haven't been able to make it work yet. I think we've learned, it's been helpful to learn more about like what would be needed. So I think also for like kind of future activations, that'll be really good knowledge for us to have. But I would love to see somebody from Nibble here. I think it's like as a city funded program, it would be a really great connection. Diana?
Yeah, I went on I guess it was the 15th, the first day, and it was amazing seeing all the people there and the beer garden and everything. So that was awesome. I haven't had a chance to go back yet, but I've seen it from a distance, and it didn't look that busy, but I'm glad to hear that there's like events every day or almost every day planned. And I'm wondering, are they, I must be missing like a site where people are learning about it. I mean, I tend to not use social media, but is there any other, and I know I see there's some events on the Culture House website. Are there other places that people are learning about all these events every day at that should be aware of?
I can answer. Yeah, right now everything's on our website. We have been sharing on social media. But we also have a Culture House newsletter if you want to sign up on that. And then we are hopefully next week gonna start adding things to the Boston calendar and to the city calendar of events as well.
Okay.
Can I just ask if just jump in real quick, Councilor Clingan, to Rashika, is there any way you could do like just like a banner with a QR code that'll take people right to your website? I could.
Yeah, there's actually a sign right outside the site that has a QR code on it, so you can use it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I will note, I did see on, I think the latest Boston calendar email that went out with like free events for the weekend or whatever. I did see this upcoming one listed.
What is the name of that Boston newsletter again? It's called Boston Events.
Yeah, it's just called Boston Calendar. It's both a website and or the Boston Calendar. Yeah, both a website, and you can sign up for their email blasts.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions or like initial thoughts? things people are hearing.
I have a question about the vendors that were there. Are they going to be there every week? Like, did we get commitments from them?
Do you mean the vendors that are like the vintage vendors working with Small Mart?
Yeah, the people selling stuff.
Yeah, Rishka, do you
not
want to take
food
this
and
one?
drink.
Yeah, Small Mart is going to be there every 2 weeks. I can't promise. From what I know, it's not always going to be the same vendors. I think Small Mart has like a vendor application, so vendors might change, but essentially we're working with them to get at least 15, if not 17 to 20 vendors on that site.
And that's only weekends. Right?
Yeah, every second Saturday, like every other Saturday.
And in between, it's just
Yeah,
the
in
food and drink.
between, yeah, in between, we're working with a lot of other artists, creatives, local organizations. We're doing like art workshops, we're doing music performances. There's like a lot of fitness, meditation, yoga things happening on the site too. So there's a lot of balance of events as well during the week. Not that large scale, but there are things happening.
So I apologize, I didn't go by last weekend. So what was there last weekend?
Last weekend, we did have a food vendor on Saturday, and on Sunday, we had, I think it was the Boston Queer Run Club. They used the space to do like a queer meetup, and they did a run around Somerville and then kind of hung out there. But yeah, there have been like events almost every day.
Yeah, Melinda,
Thank you.
to your point, like the events definitely vary in size. So I think that every other Saturday that has Small Mart and Winter Hill Brewing and Redevelopment, like that was definitely the largest use of the space that we have seen so far. And then as Rishka was mentioning, like when there's the other brewery in place, that'll probably also bring in a good crowd. But obviously, like having the vendor market, that event in particular really like makes use of the entire space. But it's also like more of a production. So there's definitely varying sizes of events that'll be happening.
Good, thank you.
I'm curious to hear more about, like, are you guys are still working on shade? I mean, it's just been so hot. Like, what's the potential for more shade there? It's something. I mean, I thought those like pipe things were really cool. I don't know if you're expanding that or if there's overhead kind of canopy things or what. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, Rishka, you can speak better to this than I can. So I know that Culture House is working to put like in the bays themselves, like to like have shade cover over, because like currently the opening is exposed to the sun, but that will have like a cover of scrim over it. So it'll have enough layers that it creates like more of a cap to that, which will make it easier to like use those bays in the scaffolding structure. But definitely aware that shade is like probably like the number one thing we're talking about with design right now. So I think we're also kind of looking to see, we're trying to like be trying to understand like where we would have a little bit more wiggle in the budget to like be able to even just buy more umbrellas and things like that and have that on the paved area, because obviously on that first day people like really wanted to be under the umbrellas, and that was, I think, added to the popularity of the beer garden space. But like being able to have more umbrellas on other parts of the space would also help people want to use those, like the cafe tables that are kind of across from where the food vendor and the restrooms are.
Yeah, we are working to get some more umbrellas on the site. We have like 2 or 3 extra umbrellas, so whenever someone needs it, we are able to like access and use those. I think also the other thing for us has been balancing the weather and these shade structures, which is definitely something we have to think about when we think about shade structures. We also have staff there, but we don't have them all the time monitoring the site, so we really need to make sure that what we get onto site is easy for us to manage as well, because we already lost 2 umbrellas in the last week with with the little bit of rain and storm that we had, and we're in the process of buying new ones. So yeah, really, we do know that we are working on it, but we do also have to find the balance between managing both those things.
I had a question about like sound, like if Like I observed, I went to the very hot outdoor workout class. It was not that bad, but and I was just thinking about they provided the music, the instructor like, just had like a portable speaker, and that's what we use. I was just wondering, if someone's doing programming that would require sound of some sort, is it like on the onus of them to bring something for that specific event, or is there any shared equipment or infrastructure for that?
So we do have a small Bluetooth speaker on site as well. It's not the loudest, so we are able to access that. It's small. It's one of the portable ones as well. And then we do have a generator. And then we are asking people that they bring anything they want to attach to it. They can bring PA systems. The only kind of thing is that we have to make sure that those events are happening during staffed hours. Because we do have like things kind of locked up in the shed, and staff are kind of responsible staff has a key to the generator. So we are asking anyone who's doing programming, what are their requirements, and based on that, kind of putting them in timeframes or like adjusting our hours to make sure there's always staff to help them out. So we are working with people to make sure that we're able to provide as much as we can.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Cool. Oh, yeah, Ron.
Are there still open slots for event programming? And if so, who do they contact Culture House if someone's interested in?
Yeah, no, definitely. So many open slots. Please feel free to reach out. We are like planning. I think we're starting to book out, which is great, but we still have a lot of open slots. And if you on the website, you'll see there's a link to a programming like form. So anyone who wants to do it, they can fill up that form, or you can just directly email me. And my email is just my name @culturehouse.cc.
And are any of them budgeted? Do any of them have a budget for?
Yeah, so on the website, you'll when you see the kind of call for programming, it also includes our like stipend structure. So in that we would provide certain amount of funding to help support the artist and or whoever is programming, and just make sure that these events are free to the public. So you'll see that structure listed there.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
It's really exciting to see that picture there with all the red umbrellas and all the colorful tents and things like that. It's fun to see it activated that way.
Yeah, Rishika, I'm glad somebody took that picture because I feel like we were all running around a lot that day. So it's nice to look back at that image.
Perfect sky too.
Any other thoughts or comments? I will say also, and I mean, we have like a summer scheduling check-in at the end of this, and I know that like sometimes having slides and things like that is helpful, but we could also look to do a CAC meeting there in the next couple of months. I think that would be a really natural choice. So I can look into that after we have that scheduling conversation later on. But if there are no other questions, Rishika, thank you so much for joining. This was really helpful. Yeah, if people have more questions, please just either reach out to me or to Rishika directly. I'm happy to provide answers. And like I said, I'll provide the budget sheet that Culture House was making up tomorrow or early next week.
Thank you. And I hope I see you guys out there. Bye.
Okay. So I'm going to shift us into our next item, which is considerations of urban renewal. And I'm just going to get up for 1 second. So I'm just going to ask if people are okay to take like a 2-minute break and then we'll come right back. Okay. Is my audio working for this? Yes, cool. Okay. Um, great. So the other main topic for this evening is a continuation of our discussion of urban renewal in Gilman Square, which we had last had back in March. I know we had hoped to come back together in May. That was the goal that we had set at that time. The temporary activation required a lot of time in the month of May and early June, so I needed to push it until June. I apologize for that. I do want to start by just kind of reviewing back some of the context that we had discussed in March, understanding that it's might be a lot of information, and you might still have some questions kind of about the different topics that we were discussing in March. I know they were, and maybe have been a while before that since you had heard some of the specifications of like urban renewal. So starting off, quick reminder, CAC's role is to advise both the city on the redevelopment of city-owned parcels and the Somerville Redevelopment Authority on the potential use of urban renewal at the mobile station. There has not been a change on the longer-term development of the city-owned parcel standpoint, so this still relies on that review or study of city-owned land, what we've been calling the disposition study. So that still needs to be completed. I understand that that might remain a frustrating constraint, but that's still the plan for that item of things. So regarding the urban renewal piece specifically, again, for context, based on goals in the neighborhood, there has been a desire expressed by CAC members and others in the neighborhood to develop the city-owned land at 350 Medford Street, possibly in tandem with the mobile station at the corner of School and Medford Streets, to make a larger development parcel that could achieve more benefits for the neighborhood. And one tool considered for combining these parcels has been urban renewal, which is a process through which the area would need to be identified as blighted, substandard, or decadent. So essentially kind of like not operating to its full economic potential by the Redevelopment Authority or by the SRA. And then a plan would need to be created sort of for identifying specific parcels for that plan and the goals for the process. So the question of urban renewal has mostly been on hold from the city's planning side, since the development of the city-owned portion of the project is also on hold with the disposition study. But CAC members had asked about kind of whether urban renewal is necessary or not to achieve the neighborhood goals that we've been talking about. And some neighborhood stakeholders had also expressed a desire to move forward with deciding yes or no on the use of urban renewal while that city process plays out, to kind of give more of a sense of clarity and not have that question hanging out there. So just to kind of stress from last time, there's no requirement to move forward on making a decision at this point. just want to keep the conversation going. The CAC could revisit this sort of when that disposition study is further along, but CAC members had expressed in March kind of wanting to continue this conversation. So definitely kind of can look to do that tonight and move towards a decision if that's something people want to do. Before we shift into conversation, I want to lay out some of the considerations that we discussed at the March meeting. Also, sorry, I'm a little winded that I ran back up the stairs quickly. So the first question, and these are just kind of listed here on the slide. So essentially, what are the neighborhood goals? Which I do think we have a fairly good sense of from previous engagement. There would certainly be kind of more engagement as we move forward. But again, these are things like providing an accessible route up to the MBTA station from Medford Street, creating quick food options in the neighborhood, creating outdoor space, creating housing on the upper floors of any development, addressing neighborhood priorities or addressing neighborhood flooding, and other priorities. So, we've talked a bit about those neighborhood goals. The second then becomes whether development would need to include both parcels to meet those goals. So at the last CAC meeting, several members had expressed that they would kind of be disappointed to see development move forward that doesn't include both parcels, and to still see a gas station directly next to an MBTA station at the end of this process. Someone also noted that once a clear vision is articulated, the mobile station owner could potentially develop on their own in line with that vision to kind of get a higher value for their property. So development doesn't necessarily need to include both parcels sort of in tandem, but there's an expressed desire that it would. The third consideration, I think, then is if there's an interest in having both parcels developed together, is urban renewal the best practice for achieving coordinated development? So I do want to review again sort of what the logistics would look like if we were to move forward at this point with making any, or like kind of what the urban renewal process would be. So the first thing that would happen is that staff would prepare a letter from the Civic Advisory Committee to the Redevelopment Authority, and the CAC would then review this letter a final time and suggest edits. That document would then be sent from the Civic Advisory Committee by staff to the Redevelopment Authority. So that can be done in a month. It's really just kind of us summarizing the different viewpoints that we've heard around urban renewal and sending that to the SRA. The SRA would then discuss whether they felt urban renewal would be an appropriate tool to use here. So they would heavily factor the CAC's recommendation. They'd also want to confirm that the area sort of met their definition of blighted, substandard, or decadent. And again, these are legal terms that essentially mean like a parcel is not operating at its full economic potential. The SRA has had one discussion about this recently, and there was some hesitation expressed by an SRA member about the taking of a gas station, but this was a very early conversation. So I know also Patrick McCormick from the SRA joined us for our March meeting. So there's a lot more sort of conversation that would happen. Really no way to predict like which way that conversation would go. And then if the SRA were to decide that urban renewal should be used here, staff would then kind of conduct additional outreach and essentially go through the process that we would for any urban renewal plan. And so this would also be the point at which we would ask, if there are other parcels that people are interested in including in a plan like this, since we've also heard interest from other neighborhood stakeholders that maybe this would include more than just the mobile station. And then once we drafted a plan, it would need to be passed by the Redevelopment Authority and the City Council and the state's Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And then once that's complete, we'd probably look to do a coordinated request for proposals between the SRA and the city, sort of across the two sites, so across the mobile station and the Homans lot. So that process would probably overall take maybe 18 months to 2 years. I think somebody asked last time kind of how long that took, and Patrick, the SRA member who was in attendance, mentioned that the process can go different ways. There also occasionally with urban renewal are things like lawsuits. If ever a taking is done, so like if ever private property is taken through eminent domain, which is the process that is allowed by urban renewal. So, there are different sort of factors we need to consider in that process. So the question being whether urban renewal is like the right tool for achieving that goal. There are other goals that we could also, or other tools that we could also talk about. So there are, if the city at some point does an RFP for the Homans lot, there could also be discussion of, can we add incentives to that request for proposals? And when I say request for proposals, also just to make sure I'm not kind of getting ahead of myself here, talking about like what the process is that we would use to select a developer for the Homans lot. So there could be incentives added to that RFP or that request for proposals to encourage somebody to buy the adjacent lot. So there's other strategies that could also be used. So yeah, again, I know that's a lot of context to go over. It's kind of, urban renewal is a confusing process. That is just the reality of it. There's no kind of like necessity in making a decision this evening, but want to be here to answer any questions and then kind of hear how people are feeling about, if people feel inclined to make a decision about recommending urban renewal or not, and then what that recommendation would be. Cool. That was a lot of me talking. Melinda.
Yeah, I just wanted to oh, sorry, I'm getting feedback. So if we choose urban renewal, that means we take mobile station by eminent domain, or there's still wiggle room in there for them to like sell or something.
I think Ben's fixing something with his audio.
Yeah. So the question, just to make sure I heard it, sorry again for that issue. The question to make sure that I heard it. So it's if we were to go forward with urban renewal, and then the SRA were to, want to move forward with creating a plan, and a plan was created, is an eminent domain taking the only path forward from there? That was the question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, I know that Councillor Klingon spoke a bit about this in March, but what urban renewal does, or like having an urban renewal plan over an area does, is yes, it does serve as the justification for an eminent domain taking by the SRA, but also just the possibility of an eminent domain taking can be enough to spur development. So for instance, 299 Broadway, there is a urban renewal plan in that area. So this is the Winter Hill urban renewal plan that encompasses the old Star Market site. And a plan was created for that area that would have allowed for a taking, but it ultimately kind of incentivized the landowner of that site to sell to the current development partnership. So it doesn't necessarily have to lead to an eminent domain taking. It might encourage the private sale of land in that area.
But I would imagine that it probably lowers the price of the sale because they know that the seller is kind of forced into the position of needing to sell, right?
I don't know that it would like force down the value like that. I'm not, Rachel, I don't know if you have any experience of like seeing that happen.
Not really, because of the very specific process by which an urban renewal taking actually happens. There has to be a market. Urban renewal, you still pay market rate, right? And so there isn't a lowering of that market rate. It's sort of locking in that there definitely will be a market rate purchase. If they can get it lower, great. But
and eminent domain is market rate too, right?
Yeah. So it's based off of an appraisal would have to be done that determines the fair market value for the parcel, and that is used as like the basis of a taking. Although again, if there was a private development partner who wanted to try to do this through a private transaction rather than using eminent domain, they might offer a price higher than that and might be incentivized to do so to avoid a lawsuit or something like that. So there are kind of different factors that come into play with it. Councillor Klingon?
Can I just jump? Yeah, can I just jump in for a second? So my understanding is the conversation we had as a body seen as though like this body is constituted around the concept of an urban renewal plan. So whether or not if we as a body, whether or not we want to send a letter of support of an urban renewal plan to the SRA doesn't necessarily pigeonhole us into like what, in terms of like parcels and all that stuff. Would simply just be whether or not we as a body want to support an urban renewal plan moving forward. Is that
yes
fair to
yeah
say?
some of that cut out. Yeah, I think part of it is also around like the if people feel like they want to encourage, like not only do you support it moving forward, but like is it a process that you want to encourage the redevelopment authority to start looking deeper into without the disposition study being complete?
Okay, I mean, I would urge in that case, waiting for a disposition study for urban renewal, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I would think that that would delay things, but also I guess that puts the Homans in play for something totally different than what may be realized by the community around, you know, something combined, Homans and mobile, if it was to come to that. And I just want to be clear, I'm not pushing for one thing or another here. I just want to keep the process moving so that we have those tools and options at our fingertips. If the community comes back and says, this is what we think should happen, like they did with 299, and these are the parcels we think should be involved, like they did at 299. And in my mind, in order to do that and push things forward, you know, the question is do we support an urban renewal plan of some kind, however small? I personally, I'll be honest, it's hard for me to imagine the mobile site not being part of a development in Gilman Square that includes the that isn't incorporated into the Homan site. So for me, and I'm not saying that means we need to take it by eminent domain, like it's been mentioned, like I mentioned before, like was just mentioned, that could mean that the seller, that the mobile station is sold in a private sale, similar to 299 Broadway was. So I don't want anybody to think I'm not looking to take people's property. I'm just looking for what I think makes the most sense. Is that if we were, again, I'll say what I said last time, if everybody is okay with the fact that somebody could buy that gas station and continue to use it as a gas station by a T-stop, then I would say then you are a no probably on urban renewal. If that doesn't sit well with you, you're probably a yes. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I do just want to note that again, there are other strategies beyond urban renewal that could be used, such as incentives in the RFP. That's not to counter what Councilor Klingon just said, but you know, you could be supportive of not seeing these things come together and not necessarily think that urban renewal is the path forward. But again, you don't necessarily have to make a determination on being supportive or not of urban renewal at this point. It can be something that you come back to. Ben, I see your hand up also.
Yes. So I both think that to Jesse's point, if there's a question about what, you know, the activities that we're trying to support in the neighborhood and whether a gas station supports that, this might be the right process to engage. I also think that a disposition study and the fact that the city might choose to use the Homan site as a loading dock for other city initiatives is also a misuse of the very important area in our neighborhood. And so I think that it might be also important to move forward to let the city know, and I, not naming names, that's not what I'm trying to say, but rather to indicate the imperative and also the time sensitivity. I know it's a long process, but if we don't kick it off now and allow for the city to make decisions through this lengthy process, or for developers to make decisions and partner or take actions on the mobile site, then we'll be waiting too long for everything, and it will continue to not operate at its, you know, best, towards the best goals for the neighborhood.
Yeah, Diana.
Yeah, I'm still kind of thinking this through, but I think I agree with Councilor Klingon and with Ben. The thing that worries me about the gas station, I mean, I don't know about the economics of gas stations, but I worry that it could be a lucrative business. And if maybe not the current owner, but somebody else buys it, then it's like easy income, and why change it? And if you look at the gas station by itself, it's kind of a small parcel, so it seems like it would be difficult for it to develop on its own into something else that would be supportive of the goals that we've been talking about for this site. So I would really like to ensure that the gas station can be folded into the overall site and get that started quickly so that we're not held up later on once the disposition study is done with like trying to figure out how to make sure that the gas station also gets redeveloped. Because I think if it stays a gas station, it's not going to be a nice asset to the community. So it seems like starting the urban renewal process now, it doesn't force us to do it or lock us into anything, but at least we would start working on that now so that we have that option in the future. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just taking a little extra time to make sure I'm writing down these comments. Yes, Ron. You're muted.
Is there some kind of zoning strategy where you could say this lot is no longer usable for a gas station? Is there anything like that possible?
Zoning's not a short-term solution. So zoning, if it was continuously used as a gas station in the scenario that Diana's pointing out, that like the next person buys it and keeps it going, that could continue basically forever. So once the use is established, as long as it never breaks, it can continue. If they were to change something substantial about the project, about the property, and need a new special permit, there is a pathway to doing a sunset clause, but that you would have to have a triggering event, like a major change to the property. And I would be hard pressed to see how what that might be. That would force them to lose that right.
Are there any, I guess, other points that are still feeling confusing? Like I do want to stress, like urban renewal can be quite a confusing process. And like it's taken me a long time to learn sort of the in and outs of how it actually functions at the city. So here to answer questions as much as possible, but like I know I covered a lot of things that might not stick. Diana?
Yeah, can you just explain again, or like if the urban renewal study is done, would it look at the mobile station plus the Homans lot as kind of a justification for part of the reason of considering it to be urban renewal would be to like, I don't know if this is an argument you can make, but that the cohesive development of the whole block makes sense. And that's why this parcel should be folded in with the full Homans site. And if that's the case, then does the redevelopment study or plan then give the city more grounds to say we need to develop this whole thing together? Like in terms of like helping advance all of our goals of having something really incredible here, as opposed to the city saying, oh, we want to use this for school staging or trailers or something. I don't know if that makes sense. I was just trying to think. Like, what would the study address? Would the study address just the mobile side, or would it address the larger context and help justify why they should be developed together?
Well, I guess to the first part of that question about would it look at the larger context, from my understanding, it would look like if people were interested in looking at other parcels also, and especially kind of given that there were other parcels referenced in the 2014 station area plan for this area, that could potentially be included. I think there are some like natural other parcels to look at. But part of the question would be like what parcel should be included in this. So it definitely could look at kind of context in the neighborhood. I'll be honest, I don't know if it would look at like the context of the adjacent Homan's lot as like, and the goal of achieving joint development as like justification for the plan. Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that. Rachel, do you have?
Yeah, it could. So the Winter Hill Urban Renewal Plan is good context, right? So the Winter Hill Urban Renewal Plan has like has a star market in it, right? That's the main part of the lot. There were multiple sub properties within the star market holding. But then there are also the two corner properties at the corner of Temple and School. That's right, Temple and Broadway, that were also included in that. And part of the reason to include those two small lots at the corner, kind of like the mobile station, was that our understanding was that in order to achieve highest and best use and to make this work, you would have to do like, to make redevelopment of the star market happen, you were going to need those two lots. And that came out of years of having developers start the process, want to do it, but need those to buy those two corner properties to make what they needed to make happen in terms of access to the site, et cetera, work. What ultimately happened, of course, is that we have a star market plan that didn't need those two properties to do what they were trying to accomplish. And so it worked out in a good place. I think from what the neighborhood's perspective was in not disrupting the businesses at that corner to allow for that to happen. But urban renewal, those two corner lots are still in an urban renewal area. At some point, the folks who sit on the Winter Hill Urban Renewal Civic Advisory Committee will have a similar conversation around, should we be continuing with thinking about redevelopment of those properties and pursuing a taking of that corner? Is there something else that could be achieved or should be achieved that's better aligned with the goals of the plan?
Yeah, I mean, it could be the same situation here where the developer thinks that the site isn't big enough without the gas station included to do some scale they build.
Rachel, can I just get clarification? So Diana has been referencing a urban renewal study. Are we crossing wires with the city building disposition study, or do we mention some other study?
No, it's the urban renewal plan, right? So we have to produce an urban renewal plan that the state then approves if we go down that pathway. And so the urban renewal plan would include those engagement conversations like we did with Winter Hill, where we go out to the Gilman Square neighborhood and we have a public meeting where we say, you know, is there comfort in the neighborhood with this, taking this step of using urban renewal for the mobile station for the other lots that are the good gas site and the other sites that were considered in 2014.
Right, and that's my understanding as well. Like, I wouldn't be comfortable moving forward without some sort of community process / consensus once all the facts and all the things were laid out for people. So yeah, I mean that process would take place at some point in time if we were to move forward on an actual plan, what that plan would look.
Yeah, and so that process would take place like through the redevelopment authority. And so again, the redevelopment authority would have to kind of agree that this is something to move forward with. And then from there would kind of direct staff to do that community process to get more input and to do the kind of study that goes like to create the plan. And then that plan there are several layers of approval necessary. So the SRA would need to adopt the plan. So they would kind of need to like agree with the findings that came out of that. It would also then have to go to the city council. And so the council would have to approve it. And then as Rachel mentioned, the state's Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities would also need to approve it. Melinda?
Yeah, sorry. And I know I think you even started with this explanation, so I'm sorry that I'm going to ask you to go kind of go back over it. But so if we believe that the urban renewal plan is start the beginning of a process that could take a long time, and we decide not to do it. The flip side is, but we do agree that we want the mobile station to be part of this plan. The obstacle is what again?
You said the obstacle.
Yeah, I mean, I know that he's trying to sell, but he's having a difficult time selling because we don't have a plan in place for what, you can't sell to a developer who isn't interested in developing everything because we don't have a plan to commit that we want to develop the whole thing. I'm sorry, I get very confused.
No. I totally hear you. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to.
I think I might be able to get there. So I think what's happening, so sort of where Diana was saying, right? Like the current owner, if they choose to sell, right? If they want to keep things rolling exactly as is, nothing's changing. If they choose to sell and they choose to sell to somebody else, sure, yes.
We know that they are interested, right? We've established that they are interested in selling, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've established that they're interested in selling. Assuming that hasn't changed, let's say buyer comes in and says, "Ooh, I see an amazing opportunity here to own a gas station near McGrath Highway," and that's the vision that they have on the site. They can continue forward. Owner A, like buyer A has that vision, right? Buyer A says, "Ooh, I see a gas station near McGrath Highway. This is my dream." And they move forward with the gas station. We have no pathway that says, we have no.
How do we get the pathway? What is the pathway to say the city is committed to developing both? Is it only the urban renewal plan, or wasn't there?
So, sorry.
The alternative pathway would be what urban renewal allows is for a non-government entity to redevelop what is somebody else's property. If we were buying the lot to say, we need the mobile station to be to add to the city site so that it can be a park, it can be a community center, it can be infrastructure, part of the school, whatever that may be, we can do that without urban renewal. If we want it to be something that is owned by another private entity at the end of the day, we need to take these steps. So if we are trying to build housing, offices, restaurant space, then we need to take the step of doing the urban renewal plan.
Oh, you mean, so we're at the mercy of whatever a developer wants to put there if we don't do the urban renewal? Is that what you're saying?
They would make an application, but basically, yes.
Okay.
But I guess and then the one other path that we have talked about a little bit, but we haven't really gone into as much detail, is urban renewal allows for kind of like more certainty in that process, but there are ways that we could incentivize the development of both together. So like, adding some sort of incentive, either a financial incentive or a time incentive or some other kind of incentive. Those are probably, it's most likely to be one of those two within the request for proposals for development of the home and slot that allows them to have an easier time also purchasing the home and parcel competitively and then having that as part of one large development.
Can I elaborate on that? I think an idea like that would be like, if we didn't do redevelopment, we might have an RFP eventually for developers that would say something like, we want this kind of density on the home and site, but if you can also acquire the mobile station, we'll give you a density bonus, or we'll give you an extra 2 stores or something. And then that gives the developer the incentive to try to go and buy the mobile site and fold it into their project. But if it's not calculated right, or it's not enough of an incentive, they might say, "Oh, I don't want to bother," and then it'll remain a gas station. That's my fear. If we can do urban renewal, if we don't have the power of urban renewal as an option, I think.
But I guess so. Without the urban renewal, could they come in and put an amusement park in that spot? Like, I I know that's absurd, but they could pretty much do, I don't know, just an office building and nothing else but an office building if we just had it.
If it's like, if it's using an RFP, I mean, again, Rachel, please step in if this is incorrect, but using an RFP process, we're able to like like somebody would respond to the RFP with what they want to develop. And then I don't know exactly what the agreement would look like, but you know, they would be developing to what they are recommending on the parcels. Whereas if somebody is just purely buying straight from the landowner outside of an RFP process completely, like we're not able to put restrictions on that, but we're able to put restrictions through the RFP process. Like they're proposing something for the site, and then we would have to select from different proposals for what would actually move forward.
Zoning is our other, and that's what Ron was asking about before. Like that's our buyer B route. It's like buyer A buys it and says, I want it to be, I'm keeping it a gas station because I love McGrath Highway. Buyer B shows up and they say, ooh, I see a site that's right next to the green line. I want to build housing. And so buyer B who wants to build a 3-story, or I guess it's a 4-story limit right now, on the site, you know, if they say, great, I'm going to build a little 4-story apartment building on the property, they could do that under our current zoning. So there is a pathway forward. The challenge is that when you talk to the development community, which we've done in various phases of this work, the highest and best value for that sale of the mobile station is going to be to sell to whoever is buying the Holman's lot, because they're going to be able to get more out of doing it as a big lot, as opposed to the lot is quite small, right? As Diana was mentioning, it's a little thing. You might be able to get, you're going to get a 4-story building, but it's going to be maybe 4, 6 kind of units. It's not going to be the substantial kind of amount of housing that you would get when you combine it with the bigger lot.
So again, me being obtuse a little bit, but can we decide today whether we're going to do an RFP or urban renewal?
So I would say we're not at the point to decide on an RFP because the disposition study process has to move forward. What was brought up and why this was even like sparked in March is that having the question of urban renewal out there, there was some kind of like discomfort expressed around that. And so the question was more like, do we want to move forward at this point with making a recommendation about urban renewal or not? We understand though that it's hard without really being able to get into this RFP process. But I think we can also like set the intention that a future RFP could include things that are related to the mobile station. That's kind of the position we're in.
And the RFP process is held up. Why?
So because the city is currently doing a study of like all of the land that it holds for priorities.
Right.
So, yeah.
What's the plan with the 1895 building, if I could digress a minute?
Plan for that is for it to become city offices.
So it will get fixed.
But I do think what I'm hearing here from you all tonight is that like the outcome of buyer A buying it and keeping it long-term as a gas station is not something that there's interest in. Is that a general sense from folks? Like that pathway doesn't feel comfortable?
Yeah. I think that it would be nice to have it folded in for if we're gonna kind of do it, it would be nice to have the whole corner developed into something attractive.
Ben?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that the community would feel like it would be a great disappointment and detriment. Not only if it was a gas station, but if it was built to even a 4-story residential building, right? So even within the zoning, if it was used towards our goals, but not meeting, I'll say, to the best of the goals and aims that we've kind of been discussing, I think the community would feel a huge letdown, and that the community process has fallen short. So, I can't think of it in any way, but that we kind of do want to move forward with urban renewal, because anything else would not be meeting the aims that we've been outlining.
Diana?
Yeah, thanks. I had a point and then a question. Do we know anything about the status? I mean, I assume that it's a gas station, they have contamination or buried tanks or something like that on the site, and that if somebody did want to develop it for 4 stories of residential, to use that example, it may be too expensive to clean up the property to residential standards, or they can't have any residential on the ground floor because there's contamination in the ground. And then, I don't know, it just seems to make it more likely that it would remain a gas station rather than independently being turned into residential or something else. So that's kind of one comment. And then can you explain what you think might be the best outcome for the current owner? Like, are they more likely to want it to be a redevelopment area because it's predictable, or do they not want it to be redevelopment? Can't figure that out yet.
It's that's a great question. I think we need to look back a little bit further, and that might be a question we can re-engage with our market consultants. We have some real estate market consultants. We can see if we can, we're in a weird moment in our contract with them so I've got to figure out how we could figure this, when we can make this happen. But I am tempted to see if we can get some time to ask that kind of question. Like, what is given current market conditions, what's the highest and best outcome for that? Like, is there one of the things that's a tricky layer always is where construction costs, and construction costs do continue to rise. It's not slowing down. And what does that mean in terms of making a small project is a small project at the moment more or less viable than a larger project? And those things we see that sort of like teeter back and forth, that there are times in the market cycle where it's actually good value to be doing a small project. And there are other times when it definitely isn't. It makes sense to be part of a larger project. So it might take a little bit for us to be able to get time on their calendar to ask them to do that research for us, but we can put that on the list.
I do want to note that we are at 7. I understand that there has been desire expressed for like coming to a decision, and that the last time we spoke with this was 3 months ago. I do generally want to be respectful that we try not to go over the hour-and-a-half time for these, and we still have a couple other items to run through. How do people feel about saying, making sure that at our next meeting, this is like a main topic of discussion, and keeping this conversation forward? And if people do reach the point of saying, we feel comfortable and confident that this is the way we want to move forward about urban renewal, that like that's still very much on the table.
Ben, I'll just jump in. Definitely don't think we're there yet. I think, we should probably do this meeting if people want to.
Sorry.
I think it's been a good
Councilor
start
Corrigan,
conversation. I have to jump off because the meeting starts, but I appreciate the conversation. I'll see you all next time.
Thank you. I didn't hear that perfectly.
Yeah, my apologies. There's a lot of noise.
No, it's okay. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, how do people feel about that? I'm seeing mostly nods. Diana?
I think it'd be nice if we had like a kind of a target deadline for when we might make that decision and make that recommendation so that we can feel like we're gonna, get the information that we need and make the decision on a specific date. It would be great, so we can keep moving things along.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. With the HRNA contract, I don't know that we want to like hold this to that, just in case that does take longer. So we can also like set the goal of coming back in July and continuing that discussion if that's what people are interested in. I just want people to feel like confident in making the decision, and I know that sometimes I overcomplicate the explanations. So it's kind of how people are feeling.
Is the decision dependent on HRNA being available to do the study, the redevelopment study? Or?
The market question. But I do think what I might suggest is, why don't we aim, I'll see if I can take a stab at a schedule. Tell me if you all think this would work, would be to, in a July or August timeline, TBD, continue this conversation and try and get to a place of a letter to the SRA summarizing where we've been. And this particular, I think what I'm seeing is that there is a strong sense of, we don't want to see the mobile station continue on as a gas station forever. We want to figure out how we move that to redevelopment. We think urban renewal might be the tool to try yes or no, but get to a place of laying out where we've been. They are likely to not meet again until September anyway. So if we could get to a place of a summary letter that goes to them, they will also have to weigh everything that you all are saying and bring in their own perspectives. And so there could also be a conversation that I'm seeing in September or October, depending on what their schedule looks like, where we're bringing everybody together to have this conversation out in their space, and then decide to yay or nay move forward with an urban renewal plan from there.
I have another quick question. If we decide to go with the urban renewal and the city wraps up its assessment of the other plots of buildings, land, pieces of land in the meantime, and allows us to do an RFP, can we take back our urban renewal request and move in that other direction?
If we were to go through the process and land on, we think urban renewal is the potential pathway forward, we could get through the steps of doing the community outreach and saying, okay, community, this is what urban renewal would mean. This is what the steps are. We would have that big public meeting, talk about it with all of Gilman Square and anybody else in the city who wants to participate. Here are the sites that were being considered. Do you agree, yes or no, that that's a site that should be considered for urban renewal? We can collect that data. We could get to that point and see where the disposition study is. And we might be at a place there to know, like, we might be at a spot at that point to pull the trigger and say, yes, we are applying to the state, or we're not applying to the state. Like, there are various off ramps. I think, Melinda, is what you're looking for. Like, can we take steps and then pull back? And yes, there are.
Do you know when the
continue to move?
Sorry. You know when the disposition study will be done?
We're about to get started on the disposition study in the next few weeks in terms of the scoping of it. It's a complex question. Of the city has assets all over. Which ones do we prioritize to sell off? And which ones do we really need to keep for that 100-year view? And that's the kind of question that we're going to be grappling with. And it's going to be a complex one. It could take a while. But we are trying to get to a place of some clarity around it. And then again, that could also open up, like, let's say we get to a place of, oh my gosh, there is a need that is a large site, and we come to the place of the mobile station is needed to meet that large need, and maybe that large need fits the home and site plus mobile, and we were able to accomplish this plus private redevelopment. Like that maybe there's a pathway that looks like that too. That's the pathway that 90 Washington Street has gone through. We took the site at 90 Washington Street by eminent domain. It's for a public safety building. We don't need the whole of it for public safety. So it is going to be public safety building and there's been a community process that's ongoing, ready to move forward so that a portion of it can become private redevelopment with housing, et cetera.
Ben?
Wouldn't you say that the point of a disposition of the home insight be at exact odds with the idea of urban renewal? If we're saying that we only think that we can get the appropriate goals of the neighborhood met by coordinated development between, multiple lots in Gilman Square, then wouldn't the city selling off the Homan's lot not be able to deliver our goals, or at least do it as poorly as a gas station selling off the lot? I mean, I think.
Well,
yeah, I think that deserves some conversation.
But sorry, just two things on that. So one is that disposition does not necessarily mean selling. And we're trying to I think change the term we use around this, because it could also be like a leasing strategy or things like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean the sale of the Homan's lot. But the other piece of it being that disposition, the RFP process that we are talking about potentially using, or that is another option for potentially incentivizing somebody who is developing the Homan's lot to then purchase the mobile station. That is a disposition process. That's a disposing of, using an RFP process to dispose of the lot, but to achieve the development that you want to see on that lot.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I guess I'm still trying to reiterate that if we're saying that we've been going through a process to outline the many needs that we would like to have be fulfilled for the square on a limited number of parcels, of which the city owns one or two. And we envision that it will take a lot of coordination in order to maximize the benefit to an adequate level, because it is such a central area for so many people. It is the neighborhood center, the gravitational center. Then I think I'm saying that it seems that we're intending for there to be a strategic coordinated effort in order to make that happen, and that we don't think that things can be done independently. That's how I'm kind of reading the room in the last number of months. And just to respond to something that was said earlier, is Rachel, when you introduce timelines into what we could do, what actions we could take, and kind of the implications, I think the idea of having a meeting of the summer in order to explicitly figure out, are we drafting a letter before September in order that it can inform subsequent steps in the process. I like that idea, because it one, gives form to our next meeting. It allows us to kind of consolidate what we've been talking about, and also and it can kind of put a point on the hard work that we've been doing.
The other CAC members generally concur. I can't see a lot of faces, so if people are nodding, I will admit that I can't see a lot of them.
There's a lot of nodding.
Amazing.
So I'm going to just summarize this. I think that's what I'm hearing, Ben, is also let's put a letter together no matter what, right? And so a letter together, because I think it's worth getting all this down in a consolidated form. And even if there's this is what we think is the pathway and why we think this might be a pathway and why we might also be okay with that pathway, like that's okay to put down on paper. It doesn't have to be a 100% yes or 100% no. It can be option A is preferred, option B is secondary.
Okay, with that, it's 7:12, so I'm just gonna shift us into our next item. I'm just gonna take a note of that. I'm gonna shift us into our next item, which is neighborhood updates from CAC members. Again, I know we're over time, but I want to make sure this remains a space if there's anything people want to plug. Ben.
Hi, I just wanted to let everyone know that the Gilman Square Neighborhood Council is having our monthly meeting on Monday, July 1st, at the Homans site. So if you want to join us at 6:30, I believe the time, that is when we'll be gathering there. There'll be light refreshments, and we'll be using that for our rare in-person monthly meeting or bi-monthly meeting. So it'd be great to see everyone there.
Thank you, Ben. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Okay, I don't see any other hands. We have a second public comment period, but we do not currently have any members of the public on, so I'm going to skip over that. The last piece is just a summer scheduling check-in. So I know that Rachel obviously just laid out, come together in July or August. Not everyone is here, so I can obviously send an email that kind of gets availability for July and August to see if people are on vacation. Is that the preference, or do people want to? I'm here all summer, so I think you can aim for either month, both months. Would people be happy with an email that's just gauging availability for July and August? And as many of you know, I dog people over email, so I will get responses.
I would send the email.
Sure.
Cool. Can't wait. Okay. Thank you all for staying on 14 minutes over. Super appreciated. And for keeping with these discussions. Again, I know that some of these points are confusing and that it can feel like we've been spinning our wheels. So I really do appreciate y'all sticking with it and sharing perspectives, both yours and that you're hearing from others. So I will send out that email as well as the meeting summary once I have that drafted up. And if you have any questions in the meantime about the activation, please feel welcome to reach out to me or to Rishika, or just general questions about Gilman. Please always feel welcome to reach out. And hopefully we will have some week time food in the next couple of months. That would be wonderful. All right. Bye, y'all.
Hey, thanks.
Bye, thank you.